The plasma bolts screamed through the corridors of the Zephyrian royal palace, leaving molten scars on the crystalline walls. Queen Lyralii pressed herself against the cold surface, her four arms trembling as the sound of heavy footsteps echoed closer. Her elegant blue skin had turned pale with fear, and the bioluminescent patterns that normally danced across her face had dimmed to almost nothing. "Your Majesty, we must move," Captain Zethkar barked, his own purple skin flushed with panic. The elite Zephyrian Guard captain's usual composure had cracked like thin ice. Behind him, what remained of the Royal Guard clustered together, their energy weapons shaking in their grip. The rebellion had come swift and brutal. The Crimson faction had infiltrated the palace during the Festival of Three Moons, when security was traditionally relaxed. They wanted Queen Lyralii dead, and they wanted the crown for their radical leader, General Voxtar. The Queen's progressive policies of cooperation with other species had made her enemies among her own people. "The escape pods in the East Wing," Zethkar continued, his voice tight with desperation. "If we can reach them." The wall beside them exploded in a shower of crystal fragments. Through the smoking hole stepped three Crimson faction soldiers, their red armor gleaming, weapons raised. The lead soldier's face was hidden behind a menacing mask, but his voice carried cold satisfaction. "End of the line, false queen." What happened next would be burned in a Queen Lyralii's memory forever. Her guards, her supposedly elite protectors, simply ran. Zethkar turned and fled without a word, his feet slipping on the polished floor in his haste. The other guards followed, abandoning their queen to face death alone. All except one. The human stepped out from behind a fallen pillar, and Lyralii felt her breath catch. She had forgotten he was even there. Sergeant Marcus Chun of the Terran Defense Force had been assigned to her detail only a week ago, part of a new cultural exchange program. Most of the Zephyrian court had barely acknowledged his presence. Humans were new to the galactic community, their homeworld only recently discovered. They were considered primitive by many standards, lacking the advanced technology or psychic abilities of older races. Marcus was unremarkable by human standards, too. Average height, brown hair starting to show gray at the temples, weathered face marked by too many campaigns. He carried outdated kinetic weapons instead of energy arms, wore simple ballistic armor instead of powered suits. The Zephyrian guards had often joked about the primitive monkey assigned to protect their queen. But as the Crimson faction soldiers advanced, Marcus did something that would change everything. He moved forward, not back. "Well," the lead rebel sneered, his weapon trained on the queen. "The pet human thinks he can play hero." Marcus said nothing. He simply raised his rifle, a simple projectile weapon that looked ancient compared to the plasma cannon surrounding him. The rebels laughed. "Stand aside, primitive," the second soldier commanded. "This doesn't concern your kind." Marcus's response was quiet but clear. "No." The single word hung in the air like a challenge. Queen Lyralii found herself holding her breath, watching this strange human who had chosen to stand between her and certain death while her own people fled. "You're outnumbered 3-1, the lead rebel pointed out, his amusement evident. "Your weapons are inferior. Your armor is pathetic. You're not even the same species. Why would you die for her?" Marcus shifted his stance slightly, and Lyralii noticed something her guards had missed in their panic. The human's hands were steady. His breathing was controlled. There was no fear in his eyes, only cold calculation. "Because it's the right thing to do," Marcus replied simply. The rebels exchanged glances, their confidence faltering slightly at the human's calm demeanor. They had expected begging, perhaps an attempt to negotiate. They hadn't expected this quiet resolve. "Foolish monkey," the lead soldier snarled, raising his plasma rifle. "Die then." What followed happened faster than Queen Lyralii's enhanced Zephyrian reflexes could track. Marcus dropped to one knee and fired 3 times in rapid succession. The sharp crack of his kinetic weapon echoed through the corridor, so different from the electronic whine of plasma weapons. The first rebel staggered, a hole appearing in his chest plate where the bullet had punched through his supposedly superior armor. The second soldier's weapon clattered to the ground as he clutched his shattered hand. The third tried to bring his rifle to bear, but Marcus was already moving, rolling behind cover as plasma bolts scorched the air where he had been standing. Impossible, the wounded leader gasped, looking down at the blood seeping through his armor. Our shields, they're designed to deflect energy weapons. Good thing I don't use energy weapons, Marcus replied, his voice still calm as he reloaded with practiced efficiency. The remaining functional rebel soldier panicked and opened fire wildly, his plasma bolts lighting up the corridor in brilliant flashes of blue-white energy. Marcus waited patiently behind his cover, counting shots, listening to the weapon's power cell drain. When the firing stopped, the human moved again with that same deadly precision. He emerged from cover as the rebel fumbled to reload, and his next shot ended the threat permanently. The sudden silence was deafening. Queen Lyralii stood frozen against the wall, staring at the three fallen soldiers and the human who had just saved her life. Smoke drifted from the barrels of his primitive weapon, and she could smell the acrid scent of gunpowder mixed with the ozone tang of discharged plasma. Marcus approached her carefully, his weapon lowered, but ready. "Your Majesty, are you hurt?" His voice was gentle now, completely different from the cold professional tone he had used with the rebels. Lyralii shook her head, still too shocked to speak. This unremarkable human had just accomplished what her elite guards wouldn't do. He had faced down superior numbers and technology without hesitation. "We need to move," Marcus continued, scanning the corridor for more threats. "There will be more of them, and they'll have heard the shooting." "My guards," Lyralii finally managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. Marcus glanced in the direction Zethkar and the others had fled, his expression unreadable. "They made their choice, Your Majesty. Now we need to make ours." The sound of running footsteps echoed from multiple directions, growing closer. Marcus quickly checked the rebels' equipment, taking their communication devices and energy cells. His movements were efficient, professional, like he had done this 1,000 times before. "Can you run?" he asked the queen. Lyralii nodded, finally finding her voice. "Where will we go?" "They control the palace now. The escape pods." "Compromised," Marcus said grimly. "But I know another way. Stay close to me, Your Majesty. And whatever happens, don't let go." As they began to move through the crystal corridors of the palace, Queen Lyralii found herself following this strange human who had appeared from nowhere to save her life. Behind them, she could hear the rebels calling for reinforcements, coordinating their search. Ahead lay uncertainty and danger. But for the first time since the rebellion began, Lyralii felt something she hadn't experienced in hours. Hope. This human, this supposedly primitive being her guards had mocked, had just proven that courage wasn't about technology or superior firepower. It was about making a choice and standing by it, no matter the cost. As they disappeared into the shadows of the palace, neither of them knew that this was only the beginning of a bond that would reshape both their worlds. The queen who had been abandoned by her own people now had a protector who would never leave her side. And the human soldier had just taken the first step toward becoming a legend among the stars. The maintenance tunnels beneath the palace were a maze that even most of the royal staff didn't know existed. Marcus led Queen Lyralii through the narrow passages with sure steps, his rifle ready, and his eyes constantly scanning for threats. The tunnels were darker than the palace above, lit only by emergency strips that cast everything in a dim red glow. "How do you know about these passages?" Lyralii asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She stayed close behind Marcus, occasionally placing one of her 4 hands on his shoulder when the path became particularly treacherous. "I studied the palace blueprints when I was assigned here," Marcus replied quietly. "Old habit. Always know your exits." They could hear muffled explosions and weapon fire from above as the Crimson faction soldiers searched room by room. Occasionally, dust would rain down from the ceiling as something heavy moved overhead. The rebels were being thorough, and their frustration was growing with each empty room they found. They're destroying everything, Lyralii said sadly, recognizing the sound of her father's art collection being torn apart in their search. Priceless artifacts from a dozen worlds were being reduced to rubble by soldiers who cared nothing for culture or history. Marcus paused at a junction, listening carefully before choosing the left path. Things can be replaced, Your Majesty. Lives can't. They moved in silence for several minutes, navigating the twisting passages that Marcus had memorized from architectural plans most people didn't even know existed. The human's preparation was paying off, but Lyralii couldn't help wondering why he'd been so thorough for what was supposed to be a ceremonial posting. "You're not really just a cultural exchange officer, are you?" she asked as they passed under a section where the ceiling was reinforced with steel beams. Marcus glanced back at her with a slight smile. Would it matter if I wasn't? Before Lyralii could answer, the sound of voices echoed through the tunnels ahead of them. Marcus immediately signaled for silence, pressing himself against the tunnel wall and motioning for the Queen to do the same. They listened as footsteps approached, accompanied by the distinctive hum of energy weapons charging. "Check every passage," a gruff voice commanded. The human's files show he accessed the palace schematics. He might have found the old maintenance ways. "These tunnels go for kilometers," another voice complained. "It would take hours to search them all." "Then we search for hours," the first voice snapped. "General Voxtar wants the false queen's head, and he wants it before dawn. No one gets to rest until she's dead." Marcus counted at least 4 distinct voices, possibly more. He studied the tunnel ahead, noting the junction where the rebels would likely split up to cover more ground. His mind worked through tactical possibilities, calculating angles and timing. Queen Lyralii watched the human's face in the dim red light, seeing the same cold calculation that had appeared when he faced the soldiers in the palace. She was beginning to understand that Marcus Chun was far more dangerous than anyone had realized. Her guards had dismissed him as primitive, but they had failed to recognize the predator lurking beneath his unremarkable exterior. The footsteps grew closer, and Marcus made a decision. He pulled a small device from his belt, something that looked like a metal cylinder with wires attached. Lyralii had never seen anything like it, but Marcus handled it with practiced familiarity. "Grenade," she whispered, not sure what the primitive human weapon might be. Marcus shook his head. "Flashbang. Non letal. We want to avoid them, not fight them if we can help it." He waited until the sounds indicated the rebels had reached the junction, then pulled the pin and tossed the device around the corner. The explosion that followed was different from the plasma weapons Lyralii was used to. Instead of the clean flash of energy, there was a sharp bang and a burst of blinding white light that reflected off the tunnel walls. Shouts of confusion and pain echoed through the passage as the rebels stumbled around, temporarily blinded and deafened. Marcus immediately moved forward, pulling Lyralii with him as they slipped past the disoriented soldiers and continued down a different tunnel. "What was that?" one of the rebels shouted, his voice slurred and confused. "Some kind of human weapon," another replied, coughing. "Primitive but effective. Find them. They can't have gone far." But Marcus was already leading Lyralii through a section of tunnel that branched in 3 directions. He chose the middle path, which angled downward toward the palace's foundation. The air grew cooler as they descended, and Lyralii could smell something different, the metallic tang of machinery and recycled air. "Where are we going?" she asked, beginning to trust that this strange human had a plan beyond simply running and hiding. "Service Base 7, Marcus replied. "It's where they keep the maintenance shuttles. Not as fast as your escape pods, but they won't be expecting it." They emerged into a larger chamber filled with industrial equipment and small repair vehicles. Marcus quickly scanned the area, his weapon ready, but the space appeared deserted. The rebels hadn't thought to check the maintenance areas yet, focusing their search on more obvious escape routes. Marcus moved to a control panel and began working with devices from his pack. Lyralii watched in fascination as he bypassed security systems that should have required administrative access. His fingers moved with confidence across interfaces designed for Zephyrian hands, adapting to the alien technology with surprising ease. "You've done this before," she observed. "Different systems, same principles," Marcus replied without looking up. "Security is security, regardless of who designs it." A soft chime indicated success, and one of the maintenance shuttles powered up with a quiet hum. It was designed for short trips between the palace and nearby facilities, not for interstellar travel, but it would be enough to get them away from immediate danger. As Marcus performed a quick pre-flight check, Lyralii found herself studying this human who had saved her life and was now stealing a shuttle to continue protecting her. Everything about him contradicted what she thought she knew about his species. Humans were supposed to be impulsive, emotional, driven by fear and desire rather than logic. But Marcus Chun was controlled, methodical, and utterly calm under pressure. He moved like someone who had spent his life in dangerous situations, making split-second decisions that kept him alive. The other delegates from Earth had been diplomats and scientists, eager to learn about galactic civilization. Marcus was something entirely different. "You're military," she said, not making a question. Marcus paused in his checks, glancing at her with those steady brown eyes. Officially, I'm retired, and unofficially, he returned to his work without answering, but Lyralii thought she understood. Marcus wasn't just a cultural exchange officer. He was protection, sent by Earth to watch over their queen during a time of political uncertainty. Someone on his world had anticipated that things might go wrong. The sound of distant explosions reached them, closer now. The rebels were expanding their search, probably using charges to blow through locked doors. It wouldn't be long before they found the maintenance areas. "Ready," Marcus announced, gesturing for Lyralii to board the shuttle. The small craft was designed for utility, not comfort, with basic seating and minimal life support. But it was fueled and functional, which was all they needed. As the shuttle lifted off from the service bay, Lyralii looked back at the palace that had been her home for her entire life. Smoke rose from several sections, and she could see the lights of rebel search teams moving through the corridors like parasites infesting a dying host. Everything she had known, everything she had worked to build, was being destroyed by her own people. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quietly, following her gaze. He understood what she was feeling, even if he couldn't share the specific pain of watching one's home burn. "No," Lyralii replied, straightening in her seat. "You saved my life. If I had stayed, I would be dead, and the rebellion would have won completely. As long as I live, there's still hope." Marcus nodded approvingly. The queen was stronger than her fleeing guards had given her credit for. She was thinking like a survivor now, not a victim. That would serve her well in the trials ahead. "Where are we going?" she asked as the shuttle climbed away from the palace, heading for the open sky. "Somewhere safe," Marcus replied. "I have a backup plan." Lyralii found herself smiling for the first time since the rebellion began. Of course, he had a backup plan. This human who had appeared from nowhere to save her life was apparently the type of person who always had backup plans. She was beginning to understand why Earth had sent him. Behind them, the palace grew smaller in the distance, but the bond between the human soldier and the alien queen grew stronger. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And somehow, that made Lyralii believe they might actually survive. The maintenance shuttle flew through the night sky of Zephyria Prime, its small engines barely a whisper against the wind. Marcus kept them low, following the terrain to avoid detection by the capital's sensor networks. Queen Lyralii watched the landscape pass below them, familiar forests and mountains made alien by the darkness and the circumstances of their flight. "There," Marcus said, pointing toward a cluster of lights in the distance. The Terra Embassy compound. Lyralii felt a surge of hope, but it was quickly tempered by reality. "The rebels will check there first. It's the most obvious place for you to take me." Marcus smiled grimly. "That's what they'll think. But we're not going to the embassy." As they approached the compound, Lyralii could see it was already under siege. Crimson faction vehicles surrounded the perimeter, their searchlights sweeping across the buildings. The rebels had indeed thought to check the human diplomatic facilities, but their focus was entirely on the main embassy structure. Marcus guided the shuttle past the compound, continuing for several more kilometers before setting down in what appeared to be an empty field. As they landed, Lyralii realized it wasn't empty at all. Camouflaged beneath synthetic vegetation was a small bunker, its entrance hidden so well that it was invisible until you knew exactly where to look. Emergency safe house, Marcus explained as he powered down the shuttle. Built when the embassy was constructed, but never registered in any official documents. Even the ambassador doesn't know about it. They approached the hidden entrance, and Marcus placed his hand on what looked like a natural rock formation. Scanners hidden within analyzed his biometrics, and after a moment, a section of the ground slid aside to reveal stairs leading down into the earth. The safe house was small but well-equipped. Emergency rations, water purification systems, communication equipment, and enough weapons and ammunition to outfit a small squad. Most importantly, it was completely isolated from any networks that the rebels might be monitoring. "How long can we stay here?" Lyralii asked, settling onto one of the simple chairs while Marcus began activating systems. "As long as necessary," Marcus replied, checking the communication array. "This place is designed to be completely self-sufficient for months if needed." Lyralii watched him work, noting again the efficiency and familiarity with which he handled the equipment. Nothing about this felt improvised or desperate. Every piece of gear, every system, every contingency had been planned and prepared for well in advance. "You knew this would happen," she said suddenly. "Not specifically, but you knew something like this could occur." Marcus paused in his work, meeting her gaze. Intelligence suggested there was growing unrest among certain factions. The Crimson Movement had been gaining support among military units and noble houses that opposed your diplomatic initiatives. "And Earth sent you to protect me." "Earth sent a cultural exchange delegation," Marcus corrected. "I just happened to be part of it, with a hidden bunker and enough weapons to fight a war." Marcus's expression remained neutral. "Standard diplomatic security measures." Lyralii laughed, though there was no humor in it. "No wonder my guards underestimated you. You let them think you were just another soft diplomat while building a shadow network of safe houses and escape routes. Your guards underestimated me because they were looking at the wrong things," Marcus said, returning to his work. "They saw primitive weapons and simple armor and assumed that meant primitive tactics. They forgot that sometimes the oldest methods are the most effective." A soft chime indicated that the communication system was online. Marcus began entering codes and frequencies that Lyralii didn't recognize, attempting to make contact with someone outside the capital. After several minutes of static and interference, a voice crackled through the speakers. "Sanctuary Base, this is Nomad 1. Package is secure. Request immediate extraction protocol." "Copy Nomad 1, came the reply, crisp and professional. "Extraction team is standing by at Rally Point 7. ETA to your position is 4 hours. Negative on Rally Point 7. Marcus responded. "Location is compromised. Switching to Rally Point 12. "Understood. Adjusting for Rally Point 12. Nomad 1. Be advised that the situation in the capital is deteriorating. Crimson forces have declared martial law and are conducting systematic sweeps." Lyralii felt a chill at those words. Martial law meant that General Voxtar was moving to consolidate power quickly. Her people would be living under military rule, their freedoms stripped away in the name of order and security. "Any word on resistance elements?" Marcus asked. "Affirmative. Several loyalist units have refused to acknowledge the new regime and are operating independently. Captain Zethkar has been executed for cowardice, but some of the Royal Guard escaped and are trying to organize." Lyralii gasped at the news of Zethkar's death. Despite his cowardice in abandoning her, he had served faithfully for years before this night. The fact that the rebels had killed him for fleeing rather than for loyalty suggested they were eliminating anyone who might pose a future threat. The rebels are moving faster than expected, Marcus said, his expression grim. 4 hours might be too long to wait. What do you mean? Lyrelii asked. Marcus pointed to a display showing local sensor readings. They're expanding their search pattern. Systematic grid searches with military precision. They'll find this location eventually. As if summoned by his words, distant rumbles echoed through the bunker walls. Heavy vehicles were moving in the area above them, probably following the shuttle's energy signature or searching every possible hiding place within flight range of the capital. We need to move again, Marcus decided, already beginning to pack essential supplies. The extraction team will have to find us at an alternate location. Where? Lyrelii asked. If they're conducting systematic searches, nowhere on the planet is safe. Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying tactical displays and calculating probabilities. When he looked up, his expression was resolute. Then we go off-planet. The starport will be under guard. Every ship will be searched. Not the starport, Marcus replied. There's another way. He activated a different communication channel, one that connected to frequencies Lyrelii had never heard before. After several attempts, a new voice answered, speaking in accented standard with obvious caution. Who is this? How'd you get this frequency? This is Nomad 1. I need to speak with the trader. A long pause. The trader doesn't speak with strangers. Tell him it's about the debt he owes to Sergeant Shun of the Terran Defense Force. Tell him it's time to pay up. Another pause, longer this time. Then a different voice, older and more weathered. Marcus? Is that really you? Hello, Krell. I need a favor. The voice on the other end chuckled, but there was warmth in it. A favor? After what you did for me on Proxima Station, I owe you more than one favor. What do you need? Passage off-world. 2 passengers, no questions asked, no records kept. Dangerous passengers? Marcus glanced at Queen Lyrelii. The most dangerous kind. The kind that powerful people want dead. Ah, my favorite type, Krell replied. Where can I find you? Marcus gave him coordinates for a location several kilometers away, in the ruins of an old mining operation that had been abandoned for decades. It would be risky to reach, but it offered the advantage of being completely off any official maps or patrol routes. As they prepared to leave the safe house, Lyrelii found herself marveling at the network of contacts and resources that Marcus had apparently built during his short time on her world. This human who had appeared to be nothing more than a diplomatic observer was revealing layers of preparation and connection that spoke to years of experience in dangerous situations. Who is Krell? She asked as they climbed back toward the surface. An old friend, Marcus replied. Someone who understands that sometimes the right thing to do isn't the legal thing to do. They emerged into the night to find the sky lit by searchlights in the distance. The rebels were indeed expanding their search, and it was only a matter of time before they found the bunker. Marcus quickly covered their tracks and led Lyrelii away from the safe house, moving through terrain that would conceal them from both visual and electronic surveillance. As they traveled toward their rendezvous with this mysterious traitor, Lyrelii realized that her entire understanding of the galaxy had been turned upside down. She had thought she knew about human capabilities, about the balance of power between species, about the nature of civilization itself. But Marcus Chun was showing her that there were entire networks of people operating outside official channels, bound by personal loyalty rather than government authority. Humans, she was beginning to understand, had a talent for building these informal alliances, creating bonds that transcended politics and species. The abandoned mine appeared ahead of them, its broken structures dark against the star-filled sky. Somewhere up there, a ship was coming to take them to safety, and somewhere behind them, an empire was being torn apart by civil war. But here, in this moment, all that mattered was the trust between a human soldier and an alien queen, and the understanding that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The abandoned mining facility sprawled across several hectares of scarred landscape, its rusted equipment and collapsed tunnels testimony to decades of neglect. Marcus led Queen Lyrelii through the maze of broken machinery, using the wreckage to mask their heat signatures from any overhead surveillance. In the distance, they could see the lights of search vehicles sweeping other areas, but none had yet turned toward the old mine. "How do you know he'll come?" Lyralii asked quietly as they took shelter behind a massive excavator that had been stripped of anything valuable years ago. "Because Krell keeps his word," Marcus replied, checking his chronometer, "and because he owes me his life." Before Lyralii could ask about that cryptic statement, a new sound reached their ears. Not the rumble of ground vehicles or the whine of atmospheric craft, but something different, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Cloaked ship," Marcus explained, recognizing the sound signature. Krell always was paranoid about being detected. The air above them shimmered, and gradually a sleek vessel materialized as its cloaking field deactivated. It was unlike any ship in the Zephyrian fleet, clearly built for speed and stealth rather than firepower. The design was elegant, but practical, with lines that suggested it could outrun almost anything in space. A ramp descended from the ship's belly, and a figure emerged that made Lyralii's breath catch. She had never seen anything like Krell before. He was clearly not from any of the major spacefaring races she knew. Tall and lean, with skin that had a metallic sheen and eyes that seemed to hold flecks of starlight. His clothing was a mixture of practical spacer gear and exotic materials that probably cost more than most people earn in a lifetime. "Marcus Chun," Krell said, his voice carrying that same warmth they had heard over the communication link. "You look exactly the same as the day you pulled me out of that Proxima station holding cell." Marcus stepped forward, and the two embraced briefly in the manner of old soldiers who had shared dangerous times. "You look prosperous, Krell. The trading business must be good." "The trading business is always good when you know which rules to bend and which ones to break entirely," Krell replied with a grin. Then his gaze shifted to Queen Lyralii, and his expression became more serious. "Your Majesty, I am honored to meet you, though I wish the circumstances were better." Lyralii was surprised that he recognized her, but then realized that anyone operating outside official channels would make it their business to know the faces of people in power. "You're taking a significant risk helping us." "Risk is part of the business," Krell said with a shrug. "Besides, anyone who opposes General Voxtar has my support. That megalomaniac has been bad for trade throughout this sector." As they boarded the ship, Lyralii noticed details that spoke to its owner's priorities. The cargo hold was configured for maximum efficiency, with modular storage systems that could be quickly reconfigured for different types of merchandise. But she also spotted weapon emplacements that were definitely not standard merchant equipment, and sensor arrays that were far more sophisticated than necessary for simple navigation. The bridge was equally impressive, with displays showing real-time information about system traffic, patrol routes, and communication intercepts. Krell wasn't just a trader. He was an information broker who survived by knowing more about what was happening around him than anyone else. "Your timing is good," Krell said as he began the pre-flight sequence. "In another hour, the rebels will have orbital patrols covering every approach to the system. As it is, we'll have to be creative about our departure." "How creative?" Marcus asked, strapping himself into a passenger seat while helping Lyralii with the alien safety harness. "The kind of creative that voids insurance policies," Krell replied cheerfully. "Hold on to something." The ship lifted off with minimal thrust, using the terrain to mask its signature until they were clear of the immediate area. Once airborne, Krell engaged systems that made the vessel effectively invisible to most forms of detection. But Lyralii noticed that he was flying an erratic course, weaving between known sensor stations and patrol routes with the skill of someone who had done this many times before. "Where are we going?" she asked as they climbed toward space. "That depends," Krell replied. "Marcus, what's your long-term plan? I can get you out of the system, but you'll need somewhere safe to land." Marcus had been thinking about this since they left the bunker. The Galactic Council needs to know what happened here. If Voxtar's rebellion succeeds completely, it could destabilize the entire sector. The council moves slowly, Lyralii pointed out. By the time they act, Voxtar will have consolidated power and eliminated all opposition. Then, we need to make sure there's still opposition to support, Marcus said. He turned to Krell. What's your read on the political situation? How much support does Voxtar actually have? Krell's expression grew thoughtful as he navigated around a commercial shipping lane. Mixed. The military is split, with about 60% supporting the rebellion and 40% either opposing it or waiting to see which way the wind blows. The noble houses are similarly divided, though many are more concerned with protecting their own interests than supporting either side. And the people, confused and scared, Krell replied honestly. Voxtar's propaganda machine is working overtime, claiming that Queen Lyralii was planning to surrender Zephyrian sovereignty to alien powers. The fact that she was protected by a human soldier is being used to support that narrative. Lyralii felt a stab of pain at those words. Her efforts to build bridges between species, to create a more cooperative and peaceful galaxy, were being twisted into evidence of treason. The very thing she had worked hardest for was now being used to justify her death. Then, we need to change the narrative, Marcus said firmly. Show people the truth, instead of letting them hear only Voxtar's lies. How do you propose to do that? Krell asked. Voxtar controls all the major communication networks now. Marcus was quiet for a moment, his mind working through possibilities. Not all of them. There are still independent networks, pirate channels, even old emergency frequencies that most people have forgotten about. You're talking about an underground resistance movement, Lyralii realized. I'm talking about giving your people a choice, Marcus replied. Right now, they only hear one side of the story. If we can broadcast the truth, show them what really happened, some of them might choose differently. Krell laughed, but there was admiration in it. You humans never think small, do you? Most people would be happy just to escape with their lives. You want to start a revolution. Not a revolution, Marcus corrected. A restoration. Queen Lyralii is the legitimate ruler of Zephyria. Voxtar is the revolutionary. They had reached the edge of the atmosphere now, and space stretched out before them, filled with the lights of orbital stations and shipping traffic. But Lyralii could also see the ominous shapes of military vessels moving in patrol patterns, hunting for any sign of the escaped queen. There, Krell pointed to a cluster of lights near the system's edge. Mining Station Omega 7. It's technically independent, though they pay protection fees to various factions to avoid trouble. If anywhere will give us sanctuary while we figure out our next move, it's there. And the station master? Marcus asked. Yerrick Tolan used to be a smuggler before he went legitimate. He has no love for military authorities of any kind, and he values independence above politics. As they accelerated toward the mining station, Lyralii found herself thinking about what Marcus had proposed. An underground resistance movement broadcasting the truth about what had happened, rallying loyal forces to oppose the rebellion. It was audacious and dangerous, and it offered only a slim chance of success. But it was better than simply running and hiding while her people suffered under Voxtar's rule. If we do this, she said carefully, if we try to organize resistance to the rebellion, we'll be putting everyone who helps us at risk. Marcus nodded. Yes, but if we don't try, then Voxtar wins completely, and your vision of a peaceful, cooperative galaxy dies with your reign. Krell glanced back at them with interest. Are you actually considering this? Taking on a military government with nothing but truth and hope. Truth and hope, Marcus said, and whatever weapons we can find along the way. The mining station grew larger ahead of them, its industrial bulk silhouetted against the stars. It wasn't much to look at, but it represented something that both the human soldier and the alien queen understood perfectly, a chance to fight back. As they approached the docking bay, Lyralii made her decision. She was tired of running, tired of hiding while others suffered for their loyalty to her. If Marcus was willing to risk everything to restore her to the throne, then she was willing to risk everything to deserve that sacrifice. All right, she said quietly. Let's start a resistance. 3 months later, the rebellion that General Voxtar had thought would be easily crushed was spreading across Zephyria Prime like wildfire. The mining station Omega 7 had become the unlikely headquarters of a resistance movement that combined Queen Lyraliai's political legitimacy with Marcus Chen's tactical expertise and Krell's network of contacts throughout the underworld. The first broadcast had been simple. Queen Lyraliai speaking directly to her people, telling them the truth about the night of the rebellion. How her own guards had fled, while a single human soldier stood to protect her. How Voxtar's forces had murdered Captain Zethkar, not for loyalty, but for cowardice. How the Crimson faction's vision of Zephyrian purity would isolate their world from the broader galaxy and condemned their people to stagnation. The broadcast had reached only a few thousand people initially, transmitted through pirate communication networks and emergency frequencies. But those few thousand had passed the message along to others, and the truth had begun to spread through channels that Voxtar's propaganda ministry couldn't control. Now, as Queen Lyraliai stood on the bridge of the Resistance flagship, she could see the results of those months of careful work. A fleet of ships, mostly converted merchant vessels and mining craft, but also several military units that had finally declared their opposition to the rebellion. On the planet below, Loyalist forces were emerging from hiding to strike at Crimson faction supply lines and communication hubs. Intelligence reports that Voxtar is consolidating his forces around the capital, Marcus said, studying tactical displays that showed troop movements across the planet. He wore the uniform of a Zephyrian general now, a rank that Queen Lyraliai had granted him along with command of her military forces. Some had questioned putting an alien in such a position, but none could argue with his results. "He knows we're coming," Lyraliai replied. She wore battle armor now, instead of royal robes, practical gear that could protect her in combat while still displaying the symbols of her authority. "The question is whether he's confident enough in his defenses to stand and fight, or desperate enough to destroy everything rather than face defeat. Voxtar's not the type to retreat," Krell observed from his position at the communication station. The traitor had become their intelligence chief, using his contacts to coordinate with resistance cells throughout the system. His whole power base depends on the image of strength and inevitable victory. If he runs now, he loses everything. Marcus nodded, but his expression remained troubled. "That's what worries me. A desperate enemy is dangerous, especially one with access to military-grade weapons and the will to use them against civilian targets." They had seen evidence of Voxtar's growing desperation in recent weeks. Bombings of suspected resistance safe houses, mass arrests of anyone even remotely connected to the Queen's supporters, and increasingly brutal suppression of any form of dissent. The general who had claimed to be saving Zephyrian culture was destroying it in his efforts to maintain control. "The assault plan is ready," Marcus continued, pulling up a holographic display of the capital city. 3 simultaneous strikes: the palace to secure the seat of government, the military command center to cut off their coordination, and the communication array to prevent them from calling for off-world assistance. "And Voxtar himself?" Lyraliai asked. "In the palace, according to our sources. He's made it his headquarters, probably thinking the symbolic value will intimidate any attackers." Lyraliai studied the tactical display, noting the defensive positions that the rebels had established around key targets. It would not be an easy battle, even with the element of surprise and the support of the population. Many good people would die in the fighting to come. "Your Majesty," a new voice interrupted their planning session. Commander Selix, formerly of the Royal Guard, approached with obvious urgency. He was one of the few guards who had survived the initial rebellion, escaping the palace through sheer luck and eventually making his way to the resistance. "We're receiving a transmission from Captain Reyna's unit. They've successfully taken the orbital defense platform." Lyraliai felt a surge of satisfaction at the news. The orbital platform had been one of the key objectives in their campaign, controlling access to the planet from space. With it in Loyalist hands, Voxtar could no longer count on reinforcements from off-world sympathizers. "Any casualties?" she asked. "Minimal, Your Majesty." The platform's crew was mostly conscripts who surrendered as soon as they realized they were facing loyalist forces rather than aliens or pirates. It was a pattern they had seen throughout the campaign. Many of Voxstar's supporters were motivated more by fear than by genuine conviction. When faced with the reality that they were fighting their own people rather than foreign invaders, many chose to lay down their arms rather than continue the bloodshed. "That's our signal," Marcus said, checking the chronometer. "All units are in position. We can begin the final assault on your command, Your Majesty." Lyralii looked around the bridge at the faces of the beings who had chosen to follow her into this final battle. Zephyrians who had risked everything to oppose the rebellion, humans from the Terran embassy who had volunteered to fight for a cause that wasn't technically their own, and beings from a dozen other species who believed in the vision of cooperation and peace that she represented. "General Chun," she said formally, using Marcus's military title in front of the others. "Begin the operation." The battle for the capital was swift but fierce. Loyalist forces struck simultaneously at all their objectives, using tactics that Marcus had adapted from human military doctrine but modified for Zephyrian terrain and technology. The rebels fought back with desperate courage, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered by forces that included many of their former comrades. The palace fell within hours, its defenders surrendering when Queen Lyralii herself led the assault on the main gates. The sight of their legitimate ruler, alive and fighting for her throne, broke the last of their resistance. They had been told she was dead, but they were fighting to avenge her against alien invaders. The reality of her survival and the truth about the rebellion's origins shattered their conviction. General Voxtar made his last stand in the throne room itself, surrounded by the handful of supporters who remained truly loyal to his cause. When Queen Lyralii entered the chamber, flanked by Marcus and her restored royal guard, the general was waiting with a weapon in his hand and defiance in his eyes. "The false queen returns," he sneered, but there was desperation beneath the bravado. "Accompanied by her alien puppet masters, just as I predicted." "The only puppet here is you," Lyralii replied calmly. "A puppet of your own fear and hatred, dancing to music that exists only in your mind." Voxtar raised his weapon, but Marcus was faster. A single shot from the human's rifle ended the rebellion and the life of its leader. The weapon that had been dismissed as primitive had proven decisive once again. In the silence that followed, Queen Lyralii walked to her throne and sat down for the first time in months. The chamber bore the scars of battle and occupation, but it was hers again. The crown that Voxtar had refused to wear, claiming he ruled by military authority rather than royal blood, lay where he had dropped it. She picked it up and placed it on her head, reclaiming not just her throne, but her destiny. "Your Majesty," Marcus said quietly, "what are your orders?" Lyralii looked at the human who had saved her life, helped her reclaim her throne, and proven that courage and loyalty transcended species boundaries. He had asked for nothing in return except the chance to serve a cause he believed in. "My first order is to grant full Zephyrian citizenship to Sergeant Marcus Chun and to confirm his rank as General of the Royal Forces," she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber and the communication systems that would broadcast her words across the planet. "My second order is to establish a new position in the government, Ambassador of Interspecies Cooperation, to be filled by General Chun. The galaxy has seen what we can accomplish when different species work together in trust and mutual respect. And my final order for today is to declare 3 days of mourning for all those who died in this conflict, regardless of which side they fought for. They were all our people, and their deaths diminish us all." As the news of the rebellion's end spread across Zephyria Prime and beyond, the galaxy took note of what had happened. A human soldier had protected an alien queen when her own people abandoned her. A resistance movement had defeated a military rebellion through courage, truth, and the power of cooperation between species. Marcus Chun had become a legend, but more importantly, He had proven something that would echo throughout the stars for generations to come. Humanity might be new to the galactic community, but they brought something precious with them. The understanding that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost, and the courage to stand up for those things when others would not. The human guard had kept his promise. The Queen was safe, her throne restored, and her vision of a cooperative galaxy stronger than ever. And somewhere in the cosmos, other humans heard the story and understood that their species had found its place among the stars not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through the simple, powerful act of doing what was right.